Welcome, everybody, to another Andscape Roundup. I'm Erik Horne, Senior Editor at Andscape, here with Jason Reid and Bill Rhoden. We're talking about Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, over the weekend, the news broke from Adam Schefter that he's going to be signing a one-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, hey, Russell Wilson has a destination. We got a pairing of Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson. What were y'all's initial reactions to the news that Russell Wilson is going to Pittsburgh and that finally this weird relationship between Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos is done? Jason, what did you think off the rip?
Well, fellas, first thing I thought about the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting a quarterback that they're paying the minimum to $1.2 million, and the Denver Broncos are going to be paying $37.8 million of Russell Wilson's salary next year. The next thing I thought, just seeing the reaction on social media, people saying, oh, the Steelers got a backup, this old backup quarterback. Well, here's my thing. I know a lot of people think Russell Wilson is washed and that he couldn't get it done. He can't get it done anymore. But it's not exactly like he has to beat out Patrick Mahomes in Pittsburgh or Lamar or Burrow or Justin Herbert or Josh Allen. He's got to beat out Kenny Pickett. So I think the assumption that he's going to be the backup there, I think is very premature. And, I don't know if Russell Wilson has anything left, guys, but if he does, that's a great spot for him to prove a lot of people wrong.
Yeah. I'm with you, Jason. I was really, I don't know what to say this. I was really happy, to see that happen, because I guess I've got a lot of respect for Russell Wilson. I know he's got, kind of prima donna issues and all that, but in terms of his total body of work, I really think that I think that this is great, and I have a lot of respect for Mike Tomlin. He does a lot of great. Remember, he took Dwayne Haskins when it seems like nobody was, his brother was going to be cast aside, and I think he's opened the door for Russell. Because Wilson does not want to end like this. He didn't want his career to end like that. He's like 2 steps away. He's 2 steps away from a sure thing Hall of Famer. And remember, he's been to more Super Bowls than Sean Payton. And I guess I was starting to have some really big issues with Payton. Just how he treated him, the total disrespect. And I guess we've all, in our corporate careers, we've all run across somebody like that, So yeah, I really want this to work. And I'm marking on my calendar the 7th game of the Broncos schedule. I think Pittsburgh plays the Broncos. So I think we need to plan in advance, Erik, that me and Jason will be there to do. And preferably, I normally don't cheer. I always cheer for the column, but I hope they beat them like 77-0. I think to answer your question, man, I just think it potentially is great for Russell. And by the way, like you were saying, like Jason, you were saying, it ain't like, where's this debate about him having to compete? Who's he competing against? Who? Who's he competing against? You're right. It's not like Mahomes is there or Lamar Jackson. That's the reason why they were probably begging him to get in the door, because they got Pickens and who's the guy who was who's there?
Jason Rudolph.
Yeah, Rudolph. Come on, man. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you're telling me it's Mahomes or if you're telling me it's Lamar, okay, well, that's not going to happen most likely. Even like other guys, Burrow, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. But if you're telling me he's got to beat out Kenny Pickett, well, how can you naturally assume off the bat that he doesn't have a chance to start there? I think that's very presumptuous.
Yeah, and by the way, in terms of the mentoring thing, I don't know if you're a guy like Russell, if you're necessarily coming in to teach, but there's some guys in that locker room, particularly like George Pickens, who just probably needs, they need to be around a guy like Wilson, who was going to Super Bowls when those guys were like freshmen in high school. you know. So I think that Tomlin knows what he's doing in terms of gambling, that this could have a lot of great positive residual things in terms of his org. And by the way, Pittsburgh has always had a very solid organization. Mm-hmm. So you're not going into this, you're leaving this dysfunction of Denver, and you're going to a very solid franchise. So yeah, I'm really, and all of a sudden, man, now Pittsburgh, you know, they've got, at least on paper, a serious quarterback, you know, going with Cleveland, you know, Baltimore, you know, Cincinnati. So yeah, no, I think, man, for us, for what we're doing, you know, I think it's really great, man. I think it's really, really great. I'm excited. I am excited.
I'm excited too, and that's a perfect segue. You mentioned the division, Bill, and you know, I was thinking about the winners and losers of this transaction, and I think that the AFC North as a whole is just more compelling now, because you had this Steelers team that, you know, obviously they have some great pieces. They have T.J. Watt, they have George Pickens, but you knew, and you know this for any team in the NFL, if you don't have the quarterback or any kind of hope at quarterback, whatever you do on defense, whatever you do at your other positions, you're not getting anywhere, especially in that division when you got Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and, you know, Cleveland's kind of proof of this too, because Cleveland had a great team and they could throw out a litany of quarterbacks and still get to whatever record they got to and get to the playoffs, even with a Joe Flacco. So this division is going to be fantastic to watch, I think, this year, when you got Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow coming back, and then we're putting the pressure back again on Deshaun Watson to show what he's going to do. And now he's got a new receiver in Jerry Jeudy. You know, 3 black quarterbacks in this division for 3 teams who presumably could be playoff teams that can make a run. I'm excited to see how that division shakes out with those 3 guys. And
yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. You look at, Lamar won his 2nd MVP last year. The Browns got to the playoffs with Deshaun being hurt, with you know, a guy in Joe Flacco, who clearly, you know, it was past his prime, man, you know, when he helped him get to the playoffs last year. You got Russell in the division now, obviously Joe Burrow. And, you know, I look at this as being a big year for Deshaun Watson. Like, you know, they traded for Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver with the Broncos. And I look at Deshaun, you know, it's easy to forget now. The off the field stuff I'm not talking about. I'm just talking about on the field. It's easy to forget, but after the Chiefs won that first Super Bowl, their first Super Bowl, really, there wasn't that much daylight between Lamar and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you know, excuse me, Deshaun and Patrick. I'm getting the guys mixed up. There wasn't that much daylight between Deshaun and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these guys were both considered 2 of the young elite quarterbacks in the game. Clearly, you know, Deshaun had issues that derailed his career. The Browns paid a big price to get him, and he hasn't delivered to the point that you would expect him to have delivered with that contract. So let's see if next year Deshaun gets his career back on track and is more that guy we saw, you know, several years ago in Houston than the guy we see now.
Yeah, I think, you know, there are 3. You're right, Jason. There are 3 big stories, and I'm really happy that Wilson is in the mix, because, you know, we were both spending a lot of time in Baltimore with Lamar, and I still think that this is a kind of big year for Lamar too. You know, yes, he won the MVP, but yet another postseason collapse, albeit against Mahomes. But I think this is a big season for him, but in a soft way. But I think it's really big, like you said, for Deshaun. I mean, a really big year for Deshaun, and that should be one of our destinations. And obviously, big year for Wilson in Pittsburgh. So in terms of the black quarterback thing, and well, that's just for the veterans. So I think Pittsburgh is a site of interest. Cleveland clearly is a site of interest. And Baltimore is sort of third, you know, picking him up. You know, to me, my interest in Lamar now comes once they hit the postseason, because that's everything that happens before that is okay. And then, you're right. I mean, widening the field, we still don't know where Justin Fields is going to be. That's going to be yet another target where and then Caleb, I think so. We really have 4 potentially in terms of black quarterbacks, and then who knows, Jaden, for our purposes, us being in New York, if he goes to the Commanders, so we typically on our black quarterback map, we have 5 really hot points of interest, starting with Wilson in Pittsburgh, Watson in Cleveland, Lamar in Baltimore, Caleb wherever he is, Justin Fields wherever he is, and Jaden wherever he is. I think that's enough to keep us, really busy. And I think they all have, could be very impactful. So this is great.
Yeah, and Bill, along those lines, I mean, obviously we both written books about black quarterbacks and their ascent in the NFL, and conversation you and I had several years ago, and it just what you just said sparked my memory about it, is that that old Public Enemy song, "Fear of a Black Planet." I mean, we are now in a point where, and this is a conversation you and I had several years ago, that the NFL has 32 teams. We're rapidly getting to a point where there are going to be 12, 14, 16 elite level black quarterbacks in this game. I mean, yeah, CJ Stroud to that mix. I'm not ready to write off Bryce Young yet. Anthony Richardson, he was derailed with an injury last year. But, Patrick, Lamar, say what you would say about Dak, but he was a second team All-Pro and had, the best season of his career. I mean, the defense let them down and faltered in the playoffs, obviously. But, Russell Wilson, I still think, is a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Now,
I agree.
It would be much better, as you mentioned, he doesn't want his career to end like this.
Right.
So, yeah, it would be much better if he goes to Pittsburgh and balls out and shows that it was more Sean Payton than him.
Right.
But there are guys now throughout this league and more guys continually coming. And you just see, I remember, Marlon Briscoe, as Bill knows very well, Marlon is no longer with us, but I remember talking to Marlon, who was really the first black quarterback in the modern era, started for the Denver Broncos, was second AFL Rookie of the Year vote, and then they just took the job away from him, reinvented himself as a wide receiver, was a great wide receiver for the Bills, then went to the Miami Dolphins and was on 2 Super Bowl winning teams, including the undefeated team. And I'll never forget Marlon telling me in one of our conversations that they being all the black men who were denied the opportunity to play quarterback in the NFL, they always knew that if it ever got to a point where they were just allowed to compete, not handed anything, but just compete, that many of them would become the best quarterbacks in the league. And that's why Mahomes and Lamar are so important, because those guys are the manifestation of the hopes that all the old timers had, that, hey, look, just give us the opportunity to compete and we're going to be right there at the best. The best quarterback to start his career in the Super Bowl era is a black man. And I know that makes a lot of people very unhappy and uncomfortable, but it's a fact.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on with that, man. You're spot on. And hearing you talk about that and evolution, I'm kind of into this whole thing of evolution. Whenever things seem to be very dark in terms of African Americans and all that, I just have to go back to evolution and my grandfather and your grandfather and what it was then and what it is now. And I remember the same conversation about middle linebackers. Remember, and people will probably find this, there was a time when people actually thought that black people didn't have the brains to play middle linebacker and free safety and all that. And fast forward, the entire defenses are black. And I guess I was wondering at what point did we look up and say, man, the entire defense is black. So that became a non-issue. And to your point, I think you're right. Are we at that point of evolution where in, 4 years, 5 years, when almost like all the starting quarterbacks are African-American, will wonder, man, was this ever a debate? I mean, they'll look at our books and sort of like, damn, man, this was really a thing, So no, I agree. I think that's what's really exciting about where we're headed.
All right, last thing, folks. With Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, that kind of crosses out the Justin Fields option of Justin Fields going to Pittsburgh. And that was something that people were kind of talking about could be a possibility. Where do we think Justin Fields is going? I'll start first. I'm going to go out and think and say that Justin Fields will be on the Las Vegas Raiders playing for Antonio Pierce in 2024. They basically got done with the Jimmy Garoppolo experiment. Aiden O'Connell, nice little fill-in, but they got a little momentum. Antonio Pierce, give them some juice. Jason, you've written about their group several times this year. They got a lot of energy going on in Las Vegas. I think Justin Fields will be a nice addition to kind of keep the momentum going there. I don't know what they're going to have to give up, but I'm not worried about that. I just want to find a place where Justin Fields can kind of feel like he's got a group behind him. And I think that would be a good place for him to land.
Wow.
Bill?
Go ahead. Well, I like that. I hadn't really thought about that.
It just hit me. It just hit me, man.
Yeah, no, I like that. I was thinking we'd ship him to your hometown, shipping him to Atlanta. But no, I actually like that. And then that means they could. I like him in Las Vegas with Antonio, because it'll be Antonio's guy. It'll be his quarterback, and I think that we talk about black men and mentorship and all that. We talk about Tomlin, who is older, but yeah, I think that a guy like Fields could benefit from being in an organization who's got a black woman as a team president, Antonio Pierce, and then you got like Devontae Adams. So yeah, no, man, I'll co-sign that. I'll second that emotion.
Yeah, it's funny. Maybe some of our viewers saw I was kind of looking off camera for a minute. I was actually texting with a buddy of mine in the league about this very question about where this thing might wind up. And look, the Bears have the number 1 overall and the 9th overall picks in the first round. So they got a lot of draft capital, and they got other picks, obviously. If everything holds to form with what people think, they are going to take Caleb Williams, which means they got to get rid of Justin Fields. I think the Raiders makes a lot of sense. Antonio Pierce has got to win quickly. Right. Mark Davis does not, they got to get things going out there real quickly. So with what Justin Fields showed at the end of last season, I think that was legitimately very impressive. So yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Now, whether the Raiders see it as clearly as we do and are give up whatever it takes, that's a question.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the thing is, I'm sure I don't know when we'll have this our next roundtable. I'm sure that we're going to be talking about Caleb Williams and the growing pains he's going to be going through in Chicago. That to me, I don't know how you feel about that. It's just so clear that he's going to go through the same stuff. In a place like Chicago, where they're like on people. I don't know, with the exception of C.J. Stroud, Jason, I don't know any first-year quarterback who stepped in and lit the league on fire. So if Caleb Williams does not do that, and I'm not sure if he will, they're going to be, while Justin Fields is potentially balling in Las Vegas, you're going to have the Bears once again dealing with this rookie quarterback who is still learning. And I just don't know if there's an appetite there. The best news coming out of Chicago was that they're going to still build a new stadium in downtown Chicago. That was I know it's not part of this discussion. I'm a Chicagoan. I like that area where the stadium downtown, and to have a stadium in Chicago is great. Now, that puts even more pressure on Caleb, So no, man, I like the idea of Caleb in Las Vegas, and I don't know, man, struggles in Chicago.
Maybe they can protect Caleb a little better with a downtown stadium instead of at Soldier Field. God
Right.
bless that man. He's going to need some help. Now, I don't know if
Right.
keeping the same general regime is going to help him very much. But no, that's a wrap, fellas. I think we can come back later on this week, see what shakes out in free agency. Thank everybody for watching. Tune in on Andscape.com, and we will see you soon.